Well, hey everyone, I'm Nick, and welcome back to episode 7 for 2025 of Sci-Finatics Live. As always, we have a great panel of Star Trek fans and experts here to chat about everything that's going on in the world of Star Trek at the moment. It is my great pleasure to firstly introduce our first guest for today's show. He is one of the senior editors at Screen Rant. It's my great pleasure to welcome John Orquiola. Welcome, John.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. And he's been on the show before. He's a great friend of the channel. It's a pleasure to welcome back Steve Shives. Welcome back, Steve.
Steve Shives. I changed my name. Steve Shives. But yes, it's always wonderful.
I stuck an extra R in there, didn't I?
It's the accent. It's the accent. You know. Glad. I'm so happy to be here. It's always a good time when I get to chat with you guys.
Thanks so much for joining us, Steve. And as always, my fellow Sci-Fanatic colleague David joins us. As always, welcome, David.
Welcome, and otherwise known as David, just in case that gets mispronounced.
So we've got a great show for you guys today. We're going to chat about everything that's going on. We've got some stuff to talk about with the latest Star Trek United show that's obviously very hot news at the moment from Mike Sussman. We're going to chat about some stuff that's obviously the recent Star Trek Khan audio drama has recently concluded. We're going to chat about that, some Starfleet Academy stuff, and some all that Star Trek news that's going on. So let's start it off by John. Both you guys at Screen Rant, along with myself, have certainly observed a lot of fan interest in the last couple of weeks over this whole Star Trek United concept from Mike Sussman. Why do you think fans have embraced this new show so wholeheartedly?
I mean, for the same reason I got really excited when I first heard about it in August. One, it was a total surprise that all of a sudden this show not only existed, but was so far along and had been plotted so well. But I think the real answer to that question is Scott Bakula and the idea of Scott Bakula coming back to Star Trek after 20 years, I guess, since Enterprise ended. Because we feel that story was unfinished. They only got 4 seasons. They did not get to tell the macro story that they were really aiming towards, which was both the Romulan War and then also the founding of the Federation. We jumped ahead several years to the very, very tail end of it. And even then, we all know how we feel about that finale. So it is unfinished. We can get into that. But it's an unfinished story, and he's also a captain that we feel like it's his turn. Picard came back, Patrick Stewart's back, Kate Mulgrew came back. We wish Avery would come back, Avery Brooks as Cisco, but Scott Bakula apparently is not only willing to come back, there's a whole thing set up for him to come back. So I think that's what's really so exciting about this.
100%. What are your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think John has got it right in terms of why the fan base is excited about it. It doesn't surprise me that, there's a large portion of the Trek fan base that is like super excited about it because it's one of the old actors coming back, and that's really all it takes to get people excited. Like, oh, someone from one of the old shows is going to come back and play their character again. Oh my God! Like that's all it takes. But what has got me interested in it, or at least cautiously optimistic about it, is the fact that Scott Bakula is interested in coming back, because I know from his personal history of choosing to not return to revivals of his past projects. He is not an actor who just wants to come back and do the thing he did before. That's one of the he's never said it publicly. I suspect that's one of the reasons why he passed on the new Quantum Leap, which wanted him to appear. I don't think they ever asked him to be like a main character, but they at least wanted him to show up and kind of wave and be a part of it. And he politely declined. He never, talked trash about the show, but he just politely said, no, that's okay. And I think the fact that he is not only willing to do another Star Trek show and play Archer again, but that he seems kind of all in on it and has been, part of the development of it. That to me is encouraging to think, oh, okay, so it won't just be Enterprise season 5, 20 years too late. He'll be Archer, but it'll be in a different point in the character's life. It'll be a different show. It'll be telling a different story, obviously in the same universe, but a different story, hopefully a different style. Who knows if it's going to be West Wing in space? That's sort of like the shorthand. It's like, oh, he's going to be President Archer, and it's going to be like a political drama, but in the Star Trek universe. I mean, that's something they haven't really done before. So, I mean, the fact that Bakula is in, and knowing that he is not someone who just wants to show up and say, yeah, let's just do what we did before, that has me interested.
Absolutely. David, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I think it's nostalgia. And I think I definitely agree with what John and Steve have said. But I think there's been let's call it something missing from track, where people have been, a bit critical of the new track and Kurtzman era and things like this. And I think it's heading back to what we thought was good at the time and was good at the time. Although it's good to remember that Enterprise was also the new track of its day as well. And even Scott Bakula was even sort of, inferred to be a bit of a wooden actor and things like that. But I think like a good wine, it's matured with the years and it's got a new appreciation. And I think it's taking fans back to a golden era of Star Trek. And but not just that, it's actually doing it in a way that's completely new and reinvigorating it. And we're seeing not necessarily a sequel to Enterprise, but I guess a completely new theme to Star Trek, getting into that political space and exploring some things that we missed out on the first time around, e.g. the Romulan War perhaps, and filling in some of the gaps in between that time period. I think that's going to be really interesting, and seeing the formative years of the Federation and some of the possibilities of some of these alien species coming on board and how that all works out. So I think it's going to really hit home to, those long-term fans, hopefully pick up some new ones along the way.
100%. Quick shout out to Chuck. Thanks so much for the super thanks there, Chuck. Always a pleasure to have you on board as part of the audience. Great panel. Hi, Nick, David, Steve, and John. Thanks so much, Chuck. Much appreciated. I guess as you guys sort of said, I think the fact that Enterprise was sort of cancelled prematurely is probably a big part as to why I think that this is sort of spiking a lot of interest. There's a lot, as you guys were earlier saying before, there's so many aspects that we were going to get with Enterprise, from, as you said, the Romulan War to resolution of umpteen different story arcs that never kind of got fulfilled in that show. So I think there's obviously a degree of interest wrapped up in that about the show. But I also think, it's clear to me, talking to Mike, that he is a lifelong Star Trek fan, and he really does know the franchise very well. And he clearly knows, I think, what fans respond to. How do you think, how important do you guys think this is in terms of, being a showrunner for a Star Trek series?
Well, I think in Mike Sussman's case, because he has that Trek pedigree, because he used to work for Enterprise, and I believe he worked for Voyager before that, I think that's really, really important now in terms of credibility of for fans. That's one of the reasons I think why Terry McCall's was such a big hit when he took over Picard season 3, is that he was one of us. He was somebody who came from the older shows, and he understands Star Trek, and he has a deep love for it. He gets the characters, and he did a phenomenal job at Picard season 3. So I think, as somebody who wrote incredible episodes of Enterprise season 4, I love the Mirror Universe story arc. That's one of my favorite story arcs of all of Enterprise. So Mike Sussman,
a lot of people's favorite episodes of Enterprise.
It's super fun. So he's a fantastic guy to kind of do this project. Plus, it's his baby. He literally just thought of it out of the blue, and he got Scott Bakula involved. And it's from what he talked about on Sci-Finatics a couple of weeks ago, and in other interviews, he's thought about it a lot. There's a lot going on in terms of how much he's built out this world that seems to be very ready to go. So yeah, he seems like the right guy for it. So that's the other really exciting thing. It's like, it's not like we're pulling somebody new to come up with a completely new vision of Star Trek. I mean, it is going to be new because it is going to be a kind of Star Trek that we haven't seen before, which obviously we just don't want to retread Enterprise or retread what happened in the past, but it also feels like it'll be something classic as well, which I think we all kind of yearn for in a way as Star Trek keeps evolving and going in different directions. And the audience is still, even to this day, 7 or 8 years into Paramount Plus's version of Star Trek, we're all still kind of like figuring out which of it we're attached to, and which of it is like, so.
We got Steve back again. Okay,
Sorry, my
perfect timing.
My internet decided to stop working for a couple of minutes, but I'm back. Sorry.
It was your transporter.
That's okay.
It was my my subspace 100%.
Signal. I agree, John. Obviously, some Star Trek series which we've got have been, some have been a hit, some have been a bit more of a miss, but I think if you've got that sort of, I think the fact that Mike comes from that Rick Berman era of Star Trek automatically imbues you with a certain level of appreciation, I guess, in terms of what fans respond to, in terms of Star Trek. Quick shout out to Steve here. Thanks, Steve. Stephen G. The real make or break for United is whether Windy would be willing to return as Porthos. Okay, I think Windy might be a bit in the ground by now. I'm guessing, considering it's 25 years later, I don't think beagles tend to live quite that long.
But is there a clone?
Maybe son of Windy or daughter of Windy, perhaps, could return as Porthos. Unless on the mantelpiece he's got a taxidermied version.
I was just gonna say, Archer has Porthos stuffed and goes over and talks to him when he's having a difficult day as the president. He's like, "What do you think, boy? What would you do?"
Or Porthos has 4 kids. Porthos has 4 kids for Archer's 4 kids.
Good point.
Yes, and thanks Viking Lord as well. Much appreciated with the super thanks there. The Vulcans and Orions built the pyramids to mine all of Earth's dilithium. Okay.
All right.
The Egyptians might have something to say about that, but yes.
And apparently it worked because we don't have any, as far as I know.
It's all gone.
This is true. Do you guys think that fan interest in United extends more than just having stories and characters from Enterprise being satisfyingly resolved? Do you think there's much more to the fan interest than this, just other than just the fan service?
I mean, I'm very cynical about it, so I say probably not. I would like to think so. I would like to think that there is a large portion of the fan base, and maybe even a general audience beyond the existing fan base, that would be interested in the show if it turns out to be a good show. Once we find out what the show actually is, and not just a general kind of idea of what it is, if the show actually does go into production and we're like, okay, this is what the show is, and this is what the story is going to be, and these are the problems President Archer is going to be dealing with. If it actually becomes a show and we know what the show is and it sounds good, then I would like to think there are people in the fan base that would be interested in it for reasons other than, ooh, look, people we know. But like I said, the last 10, 15 years or so of not just Star Trek fandom, but fandom in general have educated me to no, most of the people who are super excited about it online just want to see the people. Like that, the nostalgia is probably 95% of it. I wish that was not the case, but I think that's the case.
But unfortunately, I think we are living in a world where studios, I think, are incredibly fearful of of greenlighting any kind of content that doesn't have an existing IP. It's like if it's completely new and different, it's like, oh, we don't know whether this is going to work or not. We're so scared. So unless we can somehow attach that nostalgia bait aspect to it, I think they're not willing to take risks like they used to. What do you guys think? Agree that is part of the problem?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that all across entertainment, all across film, all across TV. Everything's a retread, everything's a sequel, everything is a remake, everything is something you've seen before. And a good example, I think, is Predator: Badlands, which I thought was a phenomenal movie. But I thought it was phenomenal because it was completely unlike Predator '87. I mean, when I started watching, I realized, wait a minute, the Predator is the hero. Like he's the main character. He's not the villain. But I thought they made it work. I thought it was fantastic. But so that's kind of the challenge. Is like, well, do we just rehash everything again? And and just with slight variations. Hey, this time Luke Skywalker's a girl, but she also grew up on a desert planet, and she, go wait 10 years to. So yeah, I mean. It is a problem across the board. And so in terms of Star Trek United, I mean, I think the hook obviously has to be Bakula. It obviously has to be someone we've seen before, the possibility of seeing Enterprise. And then, as Steve said, like, what is the show after that? Like, and can you interest the general audience? Can you interest the fan base beyond nostalgia? And it really just becomes like, what is this show? Do we want a Star Trek West Wing? And it just all depends on how good it is, how good it looks. But again, it is all speculation because the show doesn't exist yet. We really should point this out. The show does not exist yet. We talk about
it's just a rumor still at this point.
A rumor. I mean, it would certainly be a Star Trek show, unlike any Star Trek show I think we've really, had before. But it doesn't. To me, there's enough in the concept, I think, that. When you particularly, I think, when you liken it to shows like The West Wing, like Star Wars Andor, maybe aspects of 24, maybe aspects of, The Diplomat or other, political kind of shows. I think there's definitely enough there, setting that inside the Star Trek universe where you go, okay, this actually, to me, sounds like would have some actually really interesting episodes that don't just require, starship battles or phaser fights. There's enough kind of political intrigue I think you could draw out of the subterfuge of the Romulans, trying to destabilize a very brand new and just been born Federation, trying to unhinge it and cripple it, And also a lot of, I think there's a lot of stuff you could draw out with, the Tholians, for example, who we haven't really touched on, much in Star Trek at all. So there's a lot of potential, I think, in terms of what stories you could bring to the show. What do you guys think on that front in terms of what sort of narratives the show could, bring to Star Trek audiences?
I mean, I hate to speculate about stuff like that because like you were just doing, you're mentioning things that we've already seen in Star Trek, like, well, what about the Romulans? What about the Tholians? And, a good writer could do things with those and, create good stories. But when I sit here as a fan, sort of imagining the show I want, I'm thinking of, I want writers to think up stuff I haven't thought of yet. Like, that's the whole point of wanting to watch the show. So it's like, I could say like, oh, I could go back and rewatch, the last season of Enterprise and remind myself of some stuff that they set up there. Or I could think, well, yeah, but what if it's not any of that? What if it's, it's 20 years, 25 years later or whatever, and the status quo is whatever the creators of this show have decided it is. And yeah, Jonathan Archer is there, but he's older. He's in a different place in his life. He's been dealing with some different stuff. Who knows how, if it is the President Archer show, who knows how far into his presidency he is. Maybe he just got elected. Maybe he's been there for a while, presumably because it's going to be a TV show and you want there to be some drama, things maybe aren't going so well. But what's the reason? Like what's going on? And I don't know, because I would hope it wouldn't be, I really hope that we're not going to be like, oh, remember that thing that happened in season 4 of Enterprise? Well, we're finally going to get back to that. I don't care, guys. I want a new I want a new show. I don't care about filling in gaps and tying up loose ends. Like that's over. Like, that's over.
Move on, you reckon?
Move on. Well, because what we were saying a minute ago about like how Hollywood is so risk averse, and which is absolutely true and is a huge problem and has been for a while. But it's not just that they're risk averse in terms of wanting everything to have an established IP attached to it before they greenlight something. They're even risk averse within the structure of the IPs, because it's not just, well, it's got to be Star Wars. It's got to be, well, but who familiar from Star Wars can we put into this? Well, yeah, we'll do Star Trek. People know that. But which pre-existing Star Trek character can we plug into? Like, you can't even do something new within the realm of the established IP, which is just insanely limiting. It's like, okay, we'll do a new Star Trek show, but it can't be that new, and it's just, it's a little frustrating. So I kind of hope that it's Jonathan Archer surrounded by a whole bunch of stuff, Star Trek stuff, but new stuff that we haven't seen before.
Well, I think the angle about.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, go on, John.
Oh no,
I was going to say.
In many of his interviews, has pointed out like some of the stuff he would like to do, and a lot of it actually sounds really good to me in terms of like what the show he thinks it'll be, and some of the stuff he's talked about in terms of like where the Federation is, for instance, right? It's 20 years, roughly 25 years since the Federation was founded, and I think his idea was that whether or not Archer is a new president or has been there for a while. The idea is that this young Federation, this young alliance of planets, is actually in trouble, and it's on the verge of collapse, and it's taking place in this era, this late 22nd century era, which we really know nothing about. Now, I'm kind of prequel adverse at this point. I love Strange New Worlds, but I'm sick of the 23rd century. I'm sick of mining the same stuff over and over again. I want to move forward, but I also am a canon nerd. I love Trek history, and it does appeal to me that this show takes place in a 100-year period. That we just don't have that much information on, and yeah, I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious about what the Federation looked like at that young time. And I remember Sussman, and I think it was in your interview, pointed out that it's kind of like how, we know a lot about the Civil War, we know a lot about the Revolutionary War, but that period of time in between those two monumental events in American history, we don't have that much information about. Like, we generally just don't know what the country was like back then when it was still forming. So to make it kind of like that in a Star Trek setting, in the sense of the Federation, where the galaxy is, I think that's kind of interesting, and I am interested. It is,
and we actually have a very special guest who's just in it, who has just dropped in, completely unplanned. Welcome, Mike Sussman.
Whoa. What?
Hey, yo, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
What?
What's this?
Hello?
That was very unplanned.
Somebody must have said my name 3 times, because I'm not sure what I'm doing here. This is a little odd. It's interesting. I can't see any of you gents, but I can hear you. So, how's it going?
Welcome to the stream.
Welcome.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm afraid I only caught a little bit of the show so far, but I figured if I was here, you wouldn't say really bad things about me. You'd probably be nice to me. So just continue, pretend I'm not here. Yeah, seriously, I can't see anything. I've got a white screen here. What am I doing? This is live TV for you.
We can see and hear you just fine.
Okay.
While you're correcting your technical issues,
are there any burning questions I can address? There's probably none, but I thought I'd ask.
Oh, I was just about to talk about the fact that the concept of Archer's children, in terms of being, one's a Starfleet officer, one's a diplomat, one's a Federation intelligence officer, and one is an adopted Vulcan.
Right.
I think seeing the careers and what his kids are getting up to, I think is a really, really interesting part of the new series, and what their roles in the overall sort of story arc is obviously going to be, and and how that is going to relate to what obviously the president's got going on, and they're obviously going to have. I'm assuming, Mike, we're thinking about stories that are kind of going to ultimately crisscross and interconnect between the various different careers and departments that his kids are all in.
Yes. Next question.
Tell us everything about the show you're developing. Tell us all the things. Like that. Yeah. What do you expect him to spill his guts about every single thing that he's pitching to the studio right now?
Actually, yeah, that sounds great. Let me write that down. So
jot that down.
The ideas bank.
Yeah, no, look, I feel like I probably said some part of that before. Yeah, I mean, having his kids in the show, someone pointed out recently that it was like that CBS show Blue Bloods with Tom Selleck as the lead, where he has a couple of kids who are have different jobs within the world of law enforcement, and that enables that show to tell one story from a lot of different perspectives. I don't really watch the show a whole lot, so I might be making up my take on it. That is my take on it, but yeah, it enables us. I had in mind, for instance, the type of stories I wanted to do on this show, and one of them, surprise, surprise, has to do with espionage and certain species that we've seen in the past. And so it was very natural that one of the main characters would be in that world of spies and espionage and all of that. So why not make that someone who is very close to our lead character? And I think it would be also very strange to not have a main character who is not only in Starfleet, but perhaps a child of Archer's would certainly be drawn to that life. I think also among his kids, probably one of them who no longer is in Starfleet was in Starfleet in the past, which I think is a lot of there's a lot of interesting story material there. But there's so much that I have had discussions with a certain actor about regarding those kids and who they are, what possible storylines we would have for them, how they intersect with the main storylines of the show. It is a character-based show, but there's so much to figure out from that era. There's so much to tell, I think, about how the Federation came to be, how it came to become this, this pluralistic democracy that we ultimately saw in the era of Kirk and Picard. So I'm not sure that answers the question satisfactorily, but I'm trying to keep some of this close to the chest, but also
fair enough.
tantalize a little bit.
How does everyone feel about the time period that United is set in? Obviously, in the past, I think there's probably been a little bit of maybe fan frustration in terms of always kind of looking backwards to prequel type content. But I also think there's part of me that this era of Starfleet is so completely a clean slate and completely untapped in terms of really, I can't actually think of too many events or instances where we know that much about what actually happened between the end of season 4 Enterprise and the start of season 1 Discovery. I mean, what does everybody think about this this time period in terms of Federation history?
I mean, okay, so as most of you know, and Mike, we've never met, so I'm one of the sort of outliers in Star Trek fandom that I really don't give a shit about canon. And so the show, because the show is a Jonathan Archer show, obviously it has to be set within a certain time frame because we already know where Jonathan Archer is from. And so, like, to me, the time period of the show, if the show does, if we do get to see this show at some point, it's going to be set during the time period that it has to be set because, that's where it has to be because we're doing Jonathan Archer and he's played by Scott Bakula, and that's when it needs to be set. So that's, to me, that, I'm not interested in the time period for its own sake. I'm interested in the show and the stories and what the characters are. And, that's what brings me to the table. So, like, I'm not one of those Star Trek fans that sits around musing about, gosh, I wonder what the late 22nd century was like. I honestly don't care outside of the contents of a really good show. So the only interest I have as far as the time period is, well, I hope that the creators of the show get the chance to do it and are able to create some really cool stuff.
I mean, I would say I agree with that. There are a couple. I think they call them lost eras in the history of Star Trek, and some of them may be more interesting than others. This is interesting to me personally, not for really having anything to do with canon or continuity, but that it's the beginning. And that was always, I think, the promise of Enterprise. And, whether it was fulfilled or not, it was certainly cut short. And for me, I think the Federation is an important concept as, the starship on the show. I think it really is. I think it's kind of telling that you can blow up the Enterprise, but in all the changes they've made to the franchise and the history of the universe, I guess they've shrunk the Federation, but they had Earth, I guess, leave the Federation, and Vulcan left the Federation, but they didn't destroy the Federation. I think that would be like a bridge too far. So for me, in some ways, that organization is a character that we just haven't really explored. I think the franchise by and large stayed away from it because it was probably too complex to deal with initially. It was also a late addition to the show. I can't remember when in season 1 it was first mentioned, and it was Gene L. Kuhn who came up with the concept of the Federation and started dropping it into scripts. And then there was a little bit of a retcon going on because it had been the Earth Starship Enterprise up to that point, obviously. And that also, interestingly enough, plays into Balance of Terror and this show, because Balance of Terror was all about, the Earth Romulan War, which everybody retcons as, oh, it was before the Federation. But the Federation didn't exist as a concept when they made that episode. So for me, it's interesting because it's the beginning. You could certainly do a show about, the president of the Federation at any point in its history. And we've seen that character in movies and TV shows. But for me, what's interesting is that this is the start of it, and seeing how it came to be. I think one thing Enterprise didn't have time to set up was you could see the coalition of planets that we had on the show, which was this sort of mutual defense pact, which obviously was very important, and the Romulans were already a threat. But that's not really all the Federation is in the era of Kirk and Picard. So how did it change from that sort of NATO/UN/EU organization into something a lot more important? And I think that there's been so much I haven't discussed and will not discuss about that process and that journey
Fair enough.
that I think would be really interesting to people. But in many ways, we know so much more about the Klingon government or the Romulans or the Cardassians or the Bajorans than we do about the Federation. I just feel like it's a rich story area, and considering all the craziness going on in our world right now, it's a story that should be told. I believe that, and hopefully someday we'll get to tell it.
Well, Mike, one of the things actually that you've talked about in prior interviews that actually gets me excited about this idea of the show in terms of the Federation is that because it's Jonathan Archer, and he has such a huge role to play in building the alliances through his missions as captain of the Enterprise, in how this coalition even formed. I like the idea of how it's personal to him that there's a threat to this project, as you referred to it, this project that he helped put together for the last 25 years, and he's now in charge of. That the idea that he's the guy who has to save it because, otherwise it collapses without him. If I'm interpreting your past comments correctly, so I think as a personal,
I think that's fair.
Stake, yeah, I think as a personal stake into why he needs to save the Federation. I think it's a great hook for the show. So that's and obviously getting his kids involved and the various interpersonal conflicts of that. I would imagine they're not all on the same page. I would imagine that they're not all, hey, Dad, whatever you want to do, we'll do. I would guess that there's going to be some conflict.
Maybe a black sheep in the family, perhaps.
Sure,
Black on one side, one on the other.
So I think that's one of the cool ideas about this. In terms of just what role Archer personally plays as a centerpiece of this show, and how it affects the overall Federation, and what we learn about the Federation in these early years. Where just have the very idea that it could have collapsed if that is the direction that we're kind of, or the kind of story we want to tell, that Archer has to hold it together. I think that's a cool idea for a show.
Well, thanks. Yeah, me too. Thank you, John.
For real?
That's no, it's high praise. I do appreciate it, and I don't know. I just feel that there's a lot to say. Again, pointing back to our era currently. You can imagine, certainly in the United States, the next leader of this country, whatever party they may be a member of, for those of us here in the United States, they're going to have a lot to figure out, let's say. So I see Archer kind of coming in after the party is sort of over, and having to pick up the pieces, and that a lot of the different races who may have been promised certain things are just ready to check out, start a new organization, and he knows this would be a disaster. So he's got to pull it all together, and that would be the hopefully 5 or season journey that he would be on, without getting into too many specifics. I feel bad. I feel like I crashed your party, and you guys are having a great conversation.
No.
And now you're,
No. I'm encouraged by the fact that in the few minutes you've been here, you've mentioned twice wanting to use the show to sort of, or reflecting on the fact that we live in the era that we live in now, and are facing some of the problems that we face right now, because I know, like, even though I have mostly enjoyed. I've enjoyed a lot of the newer Star Trek stuff. I'll put it that way. I've enjoyed a lot of the newer stuff. There's some of it I have very, very definitely not enjoyed, but most of it I have enjoyed. But one of the things that kind of frustrated me about the most recently completed season of Strange New Worlds was the relative lack of political commentary, and especially given the moment that we live in, especially us in the United States, where I'm kind of watching it as a longtime Star Trek fan, going, please say something.
Right.
Please, we need you. We need Star Trek to be Star Trek, and to be bold, and to be brave and progressive, and say, hey, here are the problems that we need to fix, and here they are through a science fiction lens, and let's talk about this, and let's argue about this, and let's throw a spotlight on the things that we need to change in our real world, but in a science fiction way. And I'm encouraged by the fact that, again, you're not giving anything away, but just you've mentioned that twice in a passing way, and I'm hoping, given the premise of the show, if the show does come to fruition, I'm sort of hoping, like, oh, can we please get a little bit of political commentary back on Star Trek, please?
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
So yeah, you look at Roddenberry was very frustrated when he created Star Trek. He had this show on NBC called The Lieutenant, starring Gary Lockwood, and it was a show he made in cooperation with the the U.S. military, and he wrote a show that had to do with racism in the Marine Corps. And Nichelle Nichols actually was, I believe, a guest star in that particular episode. And he got so much blowback on it. The Marine Corps, if I remember, they took Camp Pendleton away from him, where they partially shot the television show, and they literally couldn't make the show anymore, and that was the end of it. And he has said how much of this he made up for posterity, I'm not quite sure, but he said that was one of the reasons he turned to science fiction, so he could write stories that were metaphorical and allegorical, and it would not set people off. So if you can't tell political stories and examine them in Star Trek, then honestly, like, what's the point, really?
Yeah.
I do feel that our job as writers and creators of these shows and these series is not to lecture people on what to think, but to ask them to think, and that is the challenge. You can watch. There are certainly episodes in this franchise where, depending on what part of the political spectrum you're on, you might watch the show and come away with a totally different take on it than the person sitting next to you. I'm not really talking out of school to point out that, Manny Coto, who was our showrunner on season 4, he was on the right side of the political spectrum. And he and I almost never discussed politics. But that didn't mean we couldn't work together and tell stories in that universe. Well, we did a very I was going to say obvious. I assume it was obvious story in season 4 of Enterprise, a 3-episode arc. The Vulcan arc was very much a take on the war in Iraq, and we had weapons of mass destruction. We had people faking the evidence about weapons of mass destruction. It was sort of exactly what was going on at that time in the world. Did that mean that we were preaching to one side or the other about what was going on with those wars in the Middle East at the time? I'm not quite sure. I think Star Trek often just takes current events, just as, say, a Law and Order show does, ripped from the headlines, so to speak, and finds a way to tell that story in a science fiction context. Do I still have you, gentlemen? My screen is frozen.
It looks like we lost Nick there somewhere.
We lost Nick, but
the
the
weapons
rest of
of
us
mass
are here.
destruction might have kicked him out of the studio. But
It might
Mike, I
have
was gonna
destroyed
ask
him. They are real. They are real. Oh my gosh.
They are. They're not
Okay.
fake. Just a question, Mike, regarding, say, also, like, looking back at the past. I have a bit of a history buff. I kind of interested in World War II, World War I, things like that. We had kind of like the League of Nations that sort of followed the World War I conflict, and it was kind of like a bit of a chance to try to get things right. And it was a bit of a failed experiment. It could be potentially, this could be what the Federation, its early founding decades or years are like, until we have, more conflict, and then we get the United Nations after that, where it has another chance to kind of, I guess, do it better. And I guess also when you've got, say, for example, like the major powers focused on a single enemy, like the Romulans and the Romulan War, and then that all gets solved, or it seems to get solved, at least for now, or transmutes to something different. Then they're sort of looking back at, okay, well, we do have differences after all, and we've got all these broader problems that we've got to deal with. And does that also maybe, build into, I guess, the territory that could be explored within United?
No, absolutely. It's interesting. I hadn't really thought in a while of the League of Nations as being an analogy for, or analogous to, the early Federation. But I think that's very apt. The one that I had been doing more thinking about was the United States after the Revolution, before the Constitution was ratified. And so you had that period of 10 to 15 years where you had this very loose organization, you had no presidency, and the United States was essentially falling apart. There was no power to tax. from the national government. It was clearly it was, had they not called a constitutional convention, come up with the Constitution, come up with the Bill of Rights, and made the United States into the country it ultimately became, it would have gone away. It would have splintered. And so I see the Federation in this era being quite a bit like that. And I love the idea of being able to draw upon real history, whether it's, from the League of Nations or the founding of the US and, endless other examples, and plug those into a sci-fi context and show in a fictional world, of course, how these problems can get solved. To me, that's again, I get all fired up. I just want to see that story.
Yeah, you had me thinking. Actually, John, what you were saying when you were talking earlier about the concept of like Archer being the guy who has to lead this coalition because he is who he is, and it reminded me of
Gentlemen.
George
I don't
Washington.
know if you can hear me, but I'm not hearing anybody.
Can hear you, Mike. Can you hear me at all?
I can hear you. I can hear you, David.
Yeah. John, are you trying to?
Yeah, I can hear
check?
you fine, Mike. If you can hear me.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Steve.
Okay.
But I hear David and only David.
Okay. Oh.
No, John.
It's just
no
David.
John. No, sorry, no John.
I might convey the question, Steve. Steve, do you want to just I'll just convey that. We'll just improvise a little bit.
Yeah. No. Yeah. We just can. Well, just the idea of Jonathan Archer as a metaphor for George Washington is basically where I was going, because that idea really kind of appeals to me now that I've thought of it. Now that John put it in my head, the idea that Archer, in this show specifically, can be the George Washington of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. It looks like we've lost Mike as well.
And if Mike comes back, maybe he can talk about that.
Exactly.
Everyone's beaming out.
It's like that Twilight Zone episode where they disappear one by one.
Yeah.
Except we can remember them when they're gone, so it's not exactly the same.
So, Steve, actually, let's sidetrack a little bit, because you brought up Strange New Worlds and about how there's no political commentary, there's no commentary about the state of our world, which is true, and that is also. Yeah. I'm somebody who actually enjoyed season 3. I guess I'm one of the outliers of the crowd. I did enjoy those episodes. I thought they were very entertaining, and I just love this cast and how talented they are. I just like them doing what they're doing. But I agree with you that. I'm also yearning for Star Trek with depth. I'm yearning for Star Trek with meat to it. And the thing with Strange New Worlds is, their approach to writing Star Trek is very, very different from, let's say, the Berman era, or the Roddenberry era, where, the writers would come up with a problem, or come up with an idea that our people have to solve, right? Like some sort of problem, some sort of crisis, some sort of thing that has to be solved with teamwork, science, and what have you. And Strange New Worlds approaches things differently. From what I've, from talking to the showrunners and the writers, they approach the show as basically like, what can our talented cast do that they haven't done before? And so the show is almost like a variety show. It's like the Muppet Show almost, like there's music and there's dancing.
Very close to home on that, John.
Yeah, it may literally be the Muppet Show next year.
Yeah, they will be. You're right. So that's kind of how that's how they approach it. Now, I see value to that as well, yes. It's a totally different kind of Star Trek, and yes, because they're kind of the flagship now. I agree that man, I want some commentary, I want some depth, I want them to actually tackle some real world issues. But at the same time, it's like, well, season 3 was written either during or right after the writer's strike, and then season 4, and then season 5 is done. Like, so all those shows are now written, and like they're now halfway through season 5, the final season. So it's like. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get it, Like, I don't think we're going to get it from that show.
And that's why I'm kind of hoping if we get more shows after this, that we get it from there. I mean, I'll respond to what you just said, and then we can move on. But, the thing about Strange New Worlds that this past season that disappointed me about it wasn't so much, because I agree with everything you just said. I think they have a great cast. I love those versions of the characters. I think it's just, I love the episodic format. I'm so happy that there's a Star Trek show where it's an episodic format instead of trying to do a movie that's 10 episodes long, because that almost never works. And I'm really, really, there's a lot about the show that I really like. It's my favorite of the new Star Trek shows, and it's not even close. But when they did try to do some social commentary in season 3, or even just some self-criticism, like when they tried to sort of look within and kind of critique Star Trek, which I also enjoy when Star Trek does, it felt like they kept pulling up, like they were afraid to go all the way with it. Like there's the documentary episode, which and there's a lot of that I really liked. Like, I liked the format. I thought they did a great job of sort of creating like a plausible feeling documentary that Beto had made, like visually and stylistically. I thought it was really good. But they raise a really interesting question about, hey, what makes us so different from our enemies? Why is Starfleet and the Federation, why are we the good guys and the Klingons or whoever are the bad guys? They raise that question, and then they just completely, their solution is, well, we're the good guys because we love each other. Come on. Like, if you're not going to answer the question, just don't even ask it. That really annoyed me, because I was like, there's such drama potential there. Like, oh, maybe they're going to like have Captain Pike have to grapple with some of his decisions, or, maybe it'll be, well, maybe it won't be definitively answered. Maybe it'll just be like a tension that we have to sit with, and we have to ask ourselves, like, as Americans, if we're Americans, or whatever country we're in, like, hey, we think our country is good, but why do we think that? Do we have a reason to think that? Or is it just blind patriotism? And instead of any of that, their solution is, well, we're all really good friends and we care about each other on this ship, so we're the good guys. Give me a break. It really let me down and annoyed me. So anyway,
Mike and I are back. I agree with. For some reason, my camera disconnected, so I'm now using my phone.
Welcome back to your own show. Good to have you.
Yeah, everybody's back. Mike,
can everyone hear everyone okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Mike, you can hear everyone?
Bye. I haven't seen the episode in question, but it sounds interesting. It's funny because Starfleet does have that dual nature to it. Their ships are loaded for bear, yet they're also out there exploring. I can imagine if the equivalent of an Excelsior class starship suddenly showed up in orbit around the planet Earth, we'd be like, holy, that
what?
They say they're here in peace, but boy, they got a lot of weapons. So I don't know. It's a rich area. And I guess I'm actually one of the things. Oh, I'm sorry, John. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I thought that was actually one of the fun things that I wish was explored a little bit further in Enterprise season 1, was that when they were out there for the first time, and they were, like they didn't have shields. They only had the polarized hull plating. They had, I think they were developing photon torpedoes or something during the season, and they just found that they were totally underpowered. They were totally not prepared for what they were facing. And I remember, I think it was Berman and Brandon who were talking about how, like, one of the original ideas that didn't happen was, they get so beat up and so devastated in season 1 from what they faced that they had to come limping back to Earth, and the ship was totally wrecked. I thought that would have been such a cool thing to see. Just oh my God, it really is so dangerous out there. We don't want to go back.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think they left Space Dock, and we did an episode where they had to install the phasers. The phasers, it wasn't Tuesday yet, so they had yet to install the phasers.
Right. Next Tuesday.
And I think we kind of did a version of that after the end of the Xindi arc. I remember, I think it was in the episode Home, where they're building the NX-02, the Columbia, and Archer's on the bridge saying, "Boy, you're going to need a lot more weapons than you've got installed on this.
Yeah, I remember that.
Boy, you've got all this cool stuff. I wish we had that. And you're going to need a lot more Makos when you go out there." That tension between exploring and defense is a really interesting area, and I think the show has steered clear of it for probably good reasons for a long time. It is a little touchy and potentially hard to justify, but yeah, you get the wrong person in running Starfleet, the CNC, or the wrong presidential leader. They've got a very lethal, destructive force at their disposal. But I mean, for me, Star Trek has, for me, always been political. It's not generally looked at as a political episode, but Errand of Mercy from the original series, which sort of comes across as like, first of all, you meet the Klingons in it for the first time, and John Colicos is amazing.
Yeah.
And there's a great tension, a great relationship between him and Kirk, and it's finally out in the open, and they're ready to, Kirk's kind of got this, bloodlust, and he's just ready to let him have it. And then the Organians stop the whole thing, and there's that wonderful scene where Kirk says, basically, we have the right, and he's interrupted by the Organians to say, you have the right to what? Kill millions of innocent people, destroy life on a planetary scale. Is that what you're defending, Captain Kirk? And Kirk is like, holy shit, that is what I'm defending. And I remember watching that as a kid, being like, oh my God, that's sort of, that's weapons of mass destruction. That's mutual assured destruction. That is the way our world was set up then, and in many ways is still set up now. And it really made me think. And that was not a controversial episode, I think, in any quarter. But the way Kirk kind of had to eat some humble pie, and even in the tag of the episode is talking to Spock about how he's a little embarrassed on what side he found himself on. I love that episode. It's still one of my all-time favorites of all the series. And I think, again, getting back to one of my earlier points, that's a way for me, I think, a way for the show the way you can tell stories with political themes that are not partisan, that are not about you're stupid and I'm smart and you need to do run this world the way I think it should be run. I think it's much more nuanced than that, and there's a much wider canvas there to paint on.
Yeah. Well, and when you lead with story and character, it's a lot easier to when you prioritize that, even if, because I know, like, when I watch Star Trek or any show that has a political message, even though I mean I'm an extremely left-leaning person politically, but if I see a show where I feel like it's just pandering to me by just regurgitating my beliefs at me, and there's not like a story attached to it or characters attached to it, I'm kind of like, okay, well, I mean, why bother? Like I already know this. I can read a blog if I just want to hear somebody tell me what I already think. I would rather have it delivered through a story and have characters who have doubts and characters who have complexity and characters who don't always do the right thing. Like you mentioned Kirk. One of my favorite Kirk stories is Star Trek VI, where he has to come to terms with the fact that he's racist against Klingons. Yeah. And that's a big part of his character arc. And the movie it lets him have that. It doesn't force him to be perfect. It doesn't force him to always be on the right side. They give him a little bit of justification to it because they say, well, his son died and he has some kind of emotional, wall to get past. But that's, he's racist against
the
Klingons.
son who he barely knew.
Yeah, he's racist against Klingons. And by the end of the movie, he has to confront that and kind of try to get past it. And I love that. And, Archer had had little moments like that in Enterprise, from where he had to face his own limitations, where he had to kind of accept that maybe the way that he wanted to go wasn't necessarily the right way, and sort of learn and grow, or learn to listen to what T'Pol was saying or listen to what someone else was saying. And that's if the characters have it all figured out from the beginning, and just then there's no story,
Yeah.
You need a journey.
Yeah.
Mike, so you've spoken to Scott, obviously, about Archer, the character and stuff, without spoiling anything. What can you say, like, what has him excited about this idea? like in your conversations, is there something where he's like, oh yeah, that really, like, I can really wrap my head around that. I really would love to try that. Like, is there something that, like, gets him going when you talk about
is he going to have a song? Is he going to get to sing and dance?
Faith of the heart.
He gets to sing "Faith of the Heart." There you go. That
the
was
candles waving.
was the only thing he
The
insisted
lounge
on.
version.
Unplugged.
Look, I think Scott has always had a great love for that character, for the show. I think he's proud to be a part of the franchise. Like all of us who worked on the show, and some of us who watched it were disappointed that it was cut short. But I think he definitely did not want to just do the same thing. It was not about let's put him on another ship with the same crew or a different crew and send him off on adventures. He had zero interest in doing that, which was good because that wasn't the show I wanted to pitch to him. It was about a different chapter in that character's life. And that is what I think he was most drawn to, but it was also what I was drawn to. I wouldn't want to, I was, I think, one of three or four writers who were on Enterprise for all 98 hours of it. We told that story, yes, it could have continued and evolved in another direction, but picking it up all these years later and not acknowledging that time had passed would have been a serious mistake. But also, where is he in this area? And again, it was clear enough. I had the foresight apparently to write in a biographical display where he would be 25, 30 years after the show. And so it just kind of clicked into place. What is the Star Trek version of that? And it didn't hurt that I think when I approached him, he had just agreed to play Abraham Lincoln in a one-man show in Ford's Theater of all places in Washington D.C. So I think I probably caught him at the right time, presenting him
feeling presidential
with this idea. He was feeling very presidential at the time.
Entering his statesman phase, the statesman era of Scott Bakula. I'm here for it.
Exactly. I think we're there.
Yeah.
I think we're there.
Yeah, I mean, you're singing my song. Like, that's pretty much exactly what I was saying. I hoped the show would be before you came in. I was like, oh, I hope it's just because I obviously I've never met Scott Bakula. I've only admired him from afar for pretty much my entire life since I saw him on Quantum Leap. And I was like, oh, I love this guy. But yeah, I mean, because I know just from things he said, either explicitly or kind of implying things in interviews that he's not really super interested in repeating himself as an actor, especially when it's like a long-term project, that he did, like Star Trek or Quantum Leap. And so, like, the idea that Scott Bakula was not only willing to be a part of this, but seems kind of all in on it, and that, like, you pitched it to him, I assume relatively early in the process, and that he was cool with it. Like, that was encouraging to me because I'm like, okay, if Bakula like actually wants to do it or is interested in it, that means it's not just going to be Enterprise season 5, 20 years late. It's going to be something different, which is what I as a fan am absolutely desperate for. Like, please, I want something else. I want a different kind. I want a different flavor of Star Trek. You know what I mean?
For sure. I mean, look, Star Trek probably will always have that flagship series about a starship exploring, and that's great. Sure. And I want that, but that isn't this.
Me too.
And I think the ship sailed on, Enterprise season 5, 20 years ago.
Yes.
It wouldn't
just by a few years.
By a few years. It reminds me of, for those of us old enough to remember or read about the 1970s, it seemed as if Roddenberry's initial idea, I don't know exactly when he thought the motion picture would get made. For a while there, it seemed like maybe it was the mid 70s, and then of course there was Phase 2, the TV series that didn't quite happen. It's always been very weird to me that the motion picture was 10 years later, yet they're only pretending it's like 2 years later, which is a little awkward. I mean, the cast looked amazing. In many ways, they looked better in that film than they did during the run of the show, but we would not be doing that here. In fact, more time may be passing in the fictional world than has passed in reality, because I think it probably would be closer
to 25 to 30 years, and it's only been 20 years since the end of the show. But people live longer in the future, so that kind of tracks.
Yeah.
I think one thing which I think you mentioned, I'm not sure whether you can say anything more about it or not, but you bringing back other, obviously at some point you wouldn't bring back the entire crew, but maybe would find uses for one character here or one character there. Sorry, I'm getting terrible feedback between my phone and my computer because I've had to switch to my phone, so I've got my own voice echoing in my ear. It's very distracting. Anyway, yeah, like bringing back Trip, for example. Is that in any way a possibility, or is that
He's dead? Let him go. Let him rest.
His twin
His
Trip.
twin. Oh! If it's Trip's twin, I'm watching this show.
Yes.
If that's the way you get Connor, if Connor Trenier wants a job in the show, well, you'll play Trip's long lost brother we've never mentioned. God, I'm watching that show.
Or do the Jeffrey Combs routine. Have him in alien makeup, and he can play a different character.
He can come back as Brunt. He'll be Brunt.
Yes.
Connor will be Trip's brother. Trip's brother will have an even deeper Southern accent. So
I know that I speak for a tiny minority in the fan base, but I am so allergic to the idea of just bringing back, legacy actors just for the sake of it. But the one way to short circuit that and get me positively excited about it is to attach it to some other cliched soap opera trope. So if it's we're bringing back the original cast of Enterprise. Oh, but they're going to be playing their own long lost identical siblings. Oh, okay. Let's see that. I want to see that.
We'll open in the sonic shower, and Paul will be washing her hair, and there'll be a knock on the glass door. Wait, Dallas did that. I'm sorry, Dallas did that 50 years ago.
Good morning. The last 25 years never happened.
Yeah. Again, it's kind of silly to talk about it in that it's not a television show, and if it were a television show, obviously you'd want to talk to certain actors before you start writing them in the storyline to see how interested they might be. So
I hope you want to be in this because I wrote you into it a lot.
But again, it's gotta serve them. Here's the thing. I wish you could I wish you could just have enough money to have everybody just sort of standing by, where you could see. You could see Jeff Combs just Arch would be walking down the corridor. Hey, Shran, how's it going? And he would just say, hey, Mr. President. But you can't do that. You've got to make them part of the story because, one, you're probably paying them a decent sum of money to be there. And also, it's just not going to be worth it to them to do that. So, I've certainly had enough. I've frankly.
There we go.
I think that's the suit that Shran's going to wear, no doubt.
Yes.
No doubt.
Hello, President Pinkskin. Yeah.
I've told you not to call me that in public.
That's what they're wearing on Andoria these days.
Classy. It's stylish.
That picture totally blew my train of thought. So somebody else.
Sorry.
Well,
anyway, what I was saying was that I do. Having known many people who worked on some of the spin-offs and on Picard, there were many people, for as many legacy characters that they brought back, there were many more who they tried to bring back, who they just couldn't for a lot of reasons, money and time and commitment. So it's a difficult thing. Now, if you're doing a total reboot, if you're doing Enterprise Season 5, you are making everybody a series regular, and they are back. And if they don't want to come back, you recast them, you bring in Zahn or whoever it is. But it's a difficult thing. But that said, I would want to find stories for everybody to justify them coming back. And there could be a scenario where, say, Surgeon General Phlox is a character who might show up every second or third episode if, John Billingsley was interested in something like that. If the storylines we were working on had something for that character to do, that would be great. Yeah. But I can't promise that you would even see the equivalent of the Surgeon General of the Federation in any episode.
I think you guys established in Enterprise that Denobulans had a lifespan of about 300 years, didn't they?
I think it was more like 30 years. I think that was John wishful thinking. He just wants to be on the latest show.
Right, okay.
I could be on any of the spinoffs. It doesn't matter what era it's set in. I could be. Yeah.
So, but that's my take on that.
I noticed in our live chat, Red Shirt Bob said, interesting how I hear both give good old Star Trek and don't do the old Star Trek. That's a challenge. I mean, I don't see how it's any more of a challenge than it is. I mean, making a good TV show is a challenge, no matter what you're doing. But the idea that, well, you can't do good Star Trek without repeating what Star Trek has already done. I mean, Star Trek has successfully done that multiple times in the history of the franchise. Like Star Trek: The Next Generation was so far, other than the basic concept of guys on a starship, like all original characters, completely different ship, even though it had the same name, completely like 100 years after the setting of it was a completely different show, just existing within the same universe. And then, that was followed by Deep Space Nine, which was an immediate sequel and literally took place at the same time, but was completely different in terms of feel and style and focus. So like the idea that it's, well, in order to do good Star Trek, you have to just do something that, that Star Trek has already done or revisit familiar territory. I don't understand that. It's the Star Trek has been at its best in the past, especially when it's creating new shows, when it is saying, let's make a clean break. Obviously it's still Star Trek. There's still going to be Klingons around. It's still going to be the sort of community property of Star Trek that you would expect to find, but it's a new premise. It's a new show. It's new people, and it's doing something that the other shows haven't done before, or doing something they have done before, but in a different way. And I don't really see why there's so much skepticism among certain people about the ability to do that when it's been done before.
%.
Thanks, Nick.
Well, you need new territory to explore. I mean, you can't just keep doing, I guess, the same old, because otherwise it's going to become the final generation. And you need to, I guess, steer a sort of a midway path towards, giving, some of the base fans what they want, get a bit of that historical element, but also how can we tell new stories in new ways and bring on board the next generation of fans and keep the franchise alive. Because if we just sort of do things like, as much as I love the legacy concept, legacy type shows, that just that doesn't bring in as much of a new audience as perhaps maybe say an Academy potentially could in terms of new, and it's probably a bit of a controversial statement, but if we look at all of those shows that have passed, like Next Generation, that was, divisive initially until it sort of settled down its first few seasons, and then people started to really enjoy it. DS9 was the same. Voyager, even Enterprise, they all had their teething periods, as I think I mentioned at the beginning of the live stream. But you need to try different things to get that new audience on board and keep faith alive, or keep hope alive. I think I'm paraphrasing you, Mike, when I say that.
Well, and even when you do revisit the familiar characters, like, I mean, to me, just from this conversation we've had tonight, from the things we've talked about the Star Trek United concept, the most interesting thing we've talked about so far is Captain Archer has kids. Like, I'm way more interested in that than I am in any of the stuff about, what's happening in the Star Trek universe, because Archer is a character that, I had varying degrees of interest in when the show was on. And of course, and I love the actor, I love Scott Bakula, and the idea of coming back to that character and, he's a father. We've never seen that before. Like that's a side of him that doesn't exist because we haven't seen it yet. And I'm instantly interested in that. Like, I don't want to see him do the same thing he did before. If you're going to say we're going to bring back an old character, okay, what's he doing now? You know, like my fellow Deep Space Nine fans like to say, like, oh, they should bring back, they should get, if Avery Brooks decides to do another show, it should be like, you know, Captain Sisko comes back from the wormhole. And my suggestion has always been, no, he came back 30 years ago. Like he's been back the whole time. That's over. Think up something else. Do something else with him, you know? And it sounds like with Archer, it's the same sort of thing. It's like, yeah, he's 20, 25, 30 years older. He's got a family, he's got kids, he's got a whole different job now. You know, like the status quo of his life is completely different. Okay, I'm on board for that. You know, because you got to do new stuff with it, or it's just going to die. You know.
Yeah, I wrote.
Well, that's the
I wrote a
challenge,
whole
isn't
article.
it? You know, new but different, or the same but different, rather.
Yes.
You know?
But yeah, no, I wrote a whole article about that also, that I thought that was actually one of the coolest things about this idea of Archer being a father, in the context of like his peers as all the other captains of the Enterprise, who they all follow the same 1960s mold of like the action hero who doesn't have a life outside of the ship, you know, like Kirk and grew into a lonely old man who died alone, basically, right? I mean, he had his two best friends who he went camping for a little while, but then he ended up alone. And you know, up until season 3, when Picard found out he had a son, you know, it was the same thing. After the ship, he didn't have a life. Whereas I love the idea of Archer actually becoming a fuller person after the Enterprise. You know, he has a family. You know, his life became richer, and he got a new job. You know, much more responsibility, much more influence over the galaxy. But on a personal level, you know, he just became a richer, fuller person. And let's explore that. You know, because again, that's not something we've seen really, especially for.
I also sense though there might be some cracks in the armor as well. That even though I 100% agree with what you're saying, John, I get the sense that, you know, it isn't necessarily all happy families. Maybe there's, you know, maybe there's a divorce from an ex-wife there. Maybe obviously, as you've said, Mike, one of the kids who's the Starfleet officer doesn't use Archer as a surname, uses Hernandez as a surname. So even though
or maybe his wife wasn't a character from the show.
but it feels like, even though we've got this collection of family members who are all established themselves in their careers and everything, that it isn't necessarily all, you know, sitting down, you know, for a happy, you know, Christmas or Thanksgiving and everybody getting along perfectly well. You know, some of the best television is obviously in the you know, in the relationships between family members. So I kind of feel like that, particularly with the child that is in a Starfleet officer and who chooses to use Hernandez as a last name, just because whether there's been a bit of a falling out with dad, or whether just doesn't want any kind of preferential treatment by using the Archer surname, there's, you know, there's these seeds of dissension in the ranks, which intrigues me a lot.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm one of 3 siblings, and I don't know how many siblings, if any, you gents all have, but sure, there's occasional or often disagreement among us, and that, you know, that at least in terms when you're writing a dramatic series, that's the fun of it. I mean, for me, going back to what Steve was talking about with Deep Space Nine, certainly some of my favorite storylines on that series had to do with Sisko and Jake. And one of my perhaps favorite episodes of that whole series, I think it was called Explorers, where they went on that that sail ship.
Such a great episode.
I can remember 30 years ago just talking to a friend of mine. We worked on the Paramount lot at the time. I was not working on Star Trek, not as a staff writer on the show. And this friend of mine was a huge Next Gen fan, loved Voyager, didn't like Deep Space at all. And he watched that episode and he was like, okay, now I get it. I like this show now. And but it was such a powerful storyline about a father and a son bonding, but you also had that science fiction component. I love that. So For me, it was more about like limiting it to 4 kids for Archer. I think that gives you a lot of storyline. I don't think they're all not going to be there at arm's length either. They're not going to be sitting down every Sunday for a family dinner. I think they're going to sort of spread out.
Yes.
We brought this up a little bit earlier, I think, before you joined us, Mike, but do all of Archer's kids each have a beagle?
Each have a beagle.
They're Porthos
Windy
clones.
1, Windy 2, Windy 3.
They're all
Windy
named
4.
for the 3 Musketeers, though.
Yes.
Which I think it'd be interesting. That's why they don't use Dad's surname anymore. They're just so upset over that. I think Archer should have like a whole flock of beagles, like the Queen of England with
there
her
you go.
corgis. They just follow them
Now you're
everywhere.
talking. Now you're talking.
I love that.
I want his kids. I want him to be resentful of his kids because none of them are into water polo. And he's just kind of, it just bums him out. He's like, none of my kids are into my sport. Really? Seriously? You don't? Come on, let's watch water polo. No, Dad, Jesus, I don't want to watch water polo.
Rick Berman's son was into water polo, if I recall, and that's why Archer was into water polo.
I love it.
And I'm sure he was very proud of his son's achievements. But no, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about the water polo angle.
Well, no, I mean, I think the reason why Captain Sisko
Romulans water polo. Let me write that down.
And we've got to have another episode like the one with, what was the episode with Porthos crapping on the Rigelian's sacred tree or something, was it?
He
took a leak on some...
He lifted a leg on a sacred tree, and and I loved Archer. That was one of the episodes where Archer had to kind of swallow his pride and realize he was in the wrong, because if you recall, Archer's original attitude was, well, to hell with them.
Right.
I'm on my dog's side. To hell with them. And then eventually he had to, all right, I'll apologize.
The dog had not gone in so long. You've got this beautiful planet here. What do you expect? I didn't watch that episode. So.
What is the crime? What crime has been committed here?
Archer will
doing that
quite a bit.
as president could be a little more tricky, but yeah. Mike, did you listen to any of the Star Trek Khan audio drama?
I have not heard that yet. I hear it's really good.
You haven't heard it yet? That was one. I wonder whether you had seen it or not, because that was one of our talking points for today. What else have I got here in my list of questions? I don't suppose there's anything more. Nothing more that what you want to talk about in terms of the various Archer progeny.
Trying to wring as much information out of this poor man. There's not as we can.
Just squeeze the blood from the stone.
Nick, I feel like Nick, I've given you plenty of exclusives.
I know. I have to ask. I have to ask. That's right.
Maybe just if I could just interrupt, Mike, with going back to Enterprise, what was your maybe your favorite storyline arc of that era? What really resonated with you and you look back fondly on from that series?
It probably has more to do with where my head is right now, but it was I don't know what we called the arc, because maybe it was the Romulan arc, where it was the one about the Romulan drone ship.
The Babel arc.
We did 3 episodes. We did Babel 1, we did United, and then I think the Aenar was the third part of that.
Yep.
And it just built to a really wonderful moment at the end of the second episode, where they had, for the moment, defeated this drone ship, and you saw these characters. You saw Shran, you saw the Tellarite, and Archer and T'Pol all in that conference room on the ship, and we pulled out the window and we realized this is like the proto-Federation just starting here. And so I don't know, that is an arc that I think was really that was laying a lot of groundwork for where the series would ultimately have gone had it continued. But that, I think that is one that really kind of resonates. Plus, the entire writing staff had sort of pulled together and had a hand in crafting that. But I think we did, throughout the whole run of the series, there were a lot of really fun episodes I look back upon.
We were talking
was there any
earlier about how.
episodes? Sorry, go on, John.
Oh no, we were talking earlier before Mike joined about how much we like the Mirror Universe, two-parter. And I think one of the funny stories about that that I know Connor has talked about on the Decon Chamber or the Shuttle Pod show prior to that was like that arc was not his favorite, just because he hated having to play a pirate, and he still complains about like pirate trip and the whole army thing.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great, but I just wanted to bring that up just because.
Maybe Trip should stay dead. What do you guys think?
Talked yourself out of a job there, buddy. Didn't like playing a pirate, huh? Well, guess what?
It can't be everybody's favorite. I think John Billingsley also was not a fan of the Mirror Universe shows. I thought he was great. They were all great in it.
They were all great.
I think I'm not an actor, but
hang on, you were a red shirt in that episode.
Well, that's true. I was a dead body.
Are you calling him out? If you're not an actor, what were you doing on camera, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. Those episodes were great fun. I think Linda has had a particularly good time working on those episodes. And yes, it was tons of fan service. My one regret with those episodes is that they had not been earlier in the show's run. Because it was an odd thing for them to appear so late. But again, we were trying to get Bill Shatner to appear on the show, and it looked like for a long time we were going to be able to get him. So we were saving this 2-block episode segment and saving the concept of the Mirror Universe. And it just got kicked all the way down to the end when it turned out we weren't able to get him. So we had to do something. We just couldn't tap dance for 2 episodes. So, but they turned out okay, I thought.
Oh, they're amazing episodes. I think a lot of people think In the Mirror Darkly is one of their favorites of the whole series.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear. I hear that Ira Bear, who is the showrunner on Deep Space Nine, often hears how much people love Trials and Tribulations and tell him that's their favorite episode of the series. And I've heard it drives him a little batty to hear that, because it isn't really an episode of Deep Space Nine. So,
do you like any of our episodes? The ones that we made all by ourselves?
Exactly. However, I don't feel that way about our Mirror Universe shows. They were great fun, and I'm glad people enjoyed them. It was a dream to write. It was a great swan song for me. They were the last episodes I wrote for the franchise. So,
was there anything that was slated for a season 5 that got thrown in the bin when the series got cancelled, or had no prep work been done at that point for anything that was headed for season 5?
Yeah, I wish I could say. I think, I don't know if it's on Memory Alpha or some other sites. Of course, anybody anywhere on the planet can just jump on some of these websites and edit them and put whatever they want. There wasn't really any work done for a potential season 5. There just wasn't time. I mean, when you're doing 22 episodes a season, as we were in season 4, if you've got time to be sitting around kicking, ideas for what you're doing next season, you're not doing probably a very good job on the episodes you should be focused on and making them as good as possible. So aside from the vague notion that, that we might do more Mirror Universe shows. I mean, certainly Manny, who sadly is not here with us anymore, had ideas that he wanted to explore, but there were no scripts. Nothing was written. There were no story documents. There were no pitches. The reason that we knew the show barely got renewed for season 4, and the chances of a season 5, as much fun as it was, and the type of work we were doing, felt that it was meaningful, that we were making good episodes, we were making good Star Trek. Certainly the odds of us coming back for a 5th season were long, and we knew that going into it. So yeah, that would have been a little bit of a fool's errand, I think, to get that far down the path.
Okay, let's got my questions here. I'm just looking if anyone's got anything they want to ask Mike. So I'm looking over my list of questions here.
There should have been another mirror universe, a different one.
The mirror universe.
The mirror universe. It's so the mirror universe was where everybody's evil. So you do like another mirror universe where everybody is just like hilariously noble.
Oh, the super good universe.
They're so good that like the regular versions are just like, man, we suck, don't we? These guys are great.
In a mirror brightly, yeah.
We're the mirror.
Until if any of you guys watched Peacemaker, until they turn out to be the secret Nazi universe or whatever. If anybody saw Peacemaker.
Well, they already did. Classic Trek did the Nazi planet, but that wasn't a secret. As soon as they landed, they were like, "Oh, Nazis! Shit, look at that!"
Universe
for me, one of the most unfortunate things about the mirror universe is that's what they call it. Obviously, it's taken from. And I think even in show, don't they now call it the mirror universe, like in universe? Which is like,
I think they can. I think
they can read the episode titles.
Yeah, didn't they do that in Discovery? Like they kind of made it was kind of a contrivance. Like they came up with it through dialogue, but like they found a way for a character to call it the mirror universe, and I was just kind of okay. Like you don't have to call it that on the show.
It's unfortunate because it implies that everything is opposite. And certainly when I was writing those two episodes, I was not thinking that. In fact, I was trying to show that there were selfless, somewhat good people like Captain Forrest in that episode was clearly in love with Hoshi, even if she was only using him, and she was trying to protect him as well. I was trying to find moments of people just not being pure evil to show that there was more to that it was an alternate reality. Granted, one
they weren't just mustache twirling, maniacally laughing.
Well, because I mean, if it was the everything is opposite universe, that's the Brainiac. Or not Brainiac, that's the Bizarro universe, not the mirror universe.
Right.
So I mean, if you want to have Bizarro Captain Archer in the new show, I'd be fine with that too.
I gotta write that down too.
That might be a contract. That might be a trademark problem with that. But
got a giant
Lower Decks.
He has a giant. Off-brand.
Oh, John, your camera seems to have frozen. John, we can hear you, but you've turned into a still. I think.
I thought he was doing a visual.
Yeah, I thought he was just throwing his voice and doing a really good job.
No blinking either. Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Oh no! Like I was just going to say that I think Lower Deck season 5's premiere did that when they crossed over into a parallel universe, and there was a whole argument about which universe was the prime timeline and which was like why are you guys the prime timeline?
You're the fake ones.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that show. That was a fun show.
Yeah. That show should not be off the air. That show that's a 10-year show. That it should have just kept going and going.
Oh,
well, the great thing about animation, they can always bring it back. Futurama came back. Family Guy came back.
I think a lot of fans struggled with the concept of it being animated. I think that there's a percentage of people out there that just could not get past the fact that they're watching an animated show. There's despite how good it was, I think it's like, there's a percentage of the population that automatically equates animation with, it's a kid's show. So there's people that just wouldn't watch it just purely because of that.
I felt bad for Akiva Goldsman having to explain to somebody why they didn't have an explanation in the crossover episode for why they were animated. Like I saw when they did the Strange New Worlds Lower Decks crossover, like there was an interview with him where they said, now, is there going to be an explanation as to why Lower Decks is animated and Strange New Worlds is live action? And the restraint that he showed in not just slamming his head into the nearest wall.
Hang on, they did kind of explain that if I remember correctly,
with the drink thing at the
end. The drink thing where they were drinking some weird beverage that had them all a bit, trippy or whatever. So
they didn't need that. Like it's like we know why. Just come on.
Yeah, it's just a medium.
Stop wasting time. We know what. Like it's one of them's a cartoon and one of them's not. Just stop wasting time.
Yes. We don't need to explain every single thing. Just go with it.
Why does Paul Wesley not look like William Shatner? Because you know why? Because.
Gentlemen,
Why not?
I do have to run, but I hope
No
you don't
worries,
mind me
Mike. Thanks so much for joining
crashing
us.
your party.
No, this was
been
great.
Fun.
Awesome.
It was a
Feel
pleasure.
Great,
free
Mike.
to
Nice
feel free to
surprise.
say what you really think once I sign off.
No.
But it's been great to chat with you all. John, Steve, nice to meet
It's
you.
been
David
great to have
as
you.
well.
Nice to meet you. It was great.
And
Likewise.
you'll see me out there, I guess, somewhere.
Thanks for joining us, Mike. Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike.
Cheers.
Bye.
All right, now we can shit talk him.
Yeah. Let's move on to Star Trek Khan. Obviously, that finished this week with its last episode. What did you guys think about the series' decision to kind of show Khan exhibiting, such things as compassion and understanding at times, which kind of, I guess, complicate or muddy or whatever the traditional Star Trek narrative of him being a megalomaniacal tyrant. What do you guys think about this more humanizing portrayal of Khan in this audio drama series?
I thought it was pretty well done. I don't think they let Khan off the hook. I don't think they changed him fundamentally. I think they showed, he had different sides to him. I mean, if he was married to Marla MacGyver's, how did he actually feel about her? It wasn't a love at first sight thing. I thought that was really interesting. I also thought that the show or the podcast did a very good job fleshing out Marla MacGyver's and giving her agency that just wasn't there in the original series because of the time frame and how that characters like that were handled back then. I thought Marla was actually the biggest winner of that podcast, of that narrative. Can we talk spoilers? Are we allowed to kind of talk a little bit about?
We'll just say this will be a spoilery conversation. So anybody who maybe hasn't seen Khan,
SETI Alpha 6 explodes
now.
SETI Alpha 6 explodes, everybody.
Oh,
Sorry to spoil
no.
it for you.
Just wrecked it, Stu.
I did not like the set. I did not care for the explanation of why SETI Alpha 6. I thought that was a bit of a letdown. But then again, I don't know what a great explanation for SETI Alpha 6 exploding would have been. I think my biggest issue with Khan, because I thought it was really well done. I thought it was the voice acting was great. I thought it was well written. Was the fact that there was a mystery threaded throughout the thing about a certain character who had a secret identity and instantly guessed it. It was.
You could kind of see it coming a mile away, couldn't you? I think I guessed it about 3 episodes before it actually got revealed.
Yeah, and the only one who was surprised was Tuvok wasn't even surprised. Honestly, he guessed it.
Tuvok was like, I was wondering when you were going to mention it.
Yes.
So, that's my only thing.
Yeah. Do you guys think?
Sorry,
Steve, go on.
No, well, I was just going to follow up what John said.
I was just going to think. Do you think we really needed? Do you think the appearance of Tuvok and Sulu in this was needed, or do you think that was just purely there for fan service? Because you could have told the story in some ways without their involvement. I thought.
I don't think they were needed at all. It reminds me a little bit of what Mike was saying when he was here a minute ago about the challenge of, if you do want to bring in a legacy character to a new show, you have to come up with a good reason for them to be there. And in terms of that story they were telling in Khan, obviously there are superficial plot reasons for Sulu and Tuvok to be there because it's Sulu's ship that brings them to the planet. But in terms of the actual story, there's no reason Sulu needs to be there. There's no reason Tuvok needs to be there. They're there because they're familiar voices. And, part of me wonders if that wasn't a request from the studio, to say can we put some more Star Trek-y people in this, or can we get a more familiar person to be a part of this? Maybe it'll be easier to market it. Because they have absolutely nothing to do with the story. They're just kind of there. Sulu totally disappears for multiple episodes and then just kind of pops up for a line just to remind us that he's here. It's just, I don't think it needed that at all.
Yeah, Sulu's sole function to me was to just keep harping on the idea that Khan was a irredeemable supervillain piece of garbage, and whatever you're up to trying to redeem this guy, don't even bother because he sucks. Like that's basically that was his function on the show.
And in the end, the whole obviously, Khan had all this vengeful, bitter and twisted nature about him that he threw on Kirk, as if Kirk doomed all of his people to death on the planet. But obviously, the way they explained it in the show with the Elborians or whatever blowing up SETI Alpha 6, it's like, well, hang on, doesn't this completely, because Khan was made aware of that in the audio drama series. So it's like, should he really therefore be quite as pissed off about Kirk dooming his planet? Because when you think about it, when they first got there, it was a bit of a parrot, like it was a nice, beautiful planet. They were making a colony. They were building it. Yeah, they had a few struggles with wildlife attacking and killing members of their crew, but they were they were getting set up. They were on their way to making it, quite a livable colony that could, expand and grow and thrive. And for no fault of Kirk's, some other alien race blew up this planet, which doomed them to death and misery. So it's like, well, does this undermine the whole vengeance thing a bit with Khan's view of Kirk?
The only thing is that Kirk never, but not just Kirk, but obviously Khan fixates on Kirk as an individual, as his nemesis, as his foil. But the only point that they had to make really was that nobody from Starfleet checked up on them, for 18 years. Like nobody went to see how they were doing. And that's, and they actually even raised that question also, which the podcast didn't answer, which kind of annoyed me, was I think it was the Lear character, Dr. Lear character, who turned out to be somebody else. But where she points out, like, why didn't the U.S. is reliant when they came into the system? All you had to do was count the planets. Hey, there's supposed to be 6 planets here. There's only 5. And
yes. Maybe they had the work experience ensign on the navigation console that day.
I mean, it goes back.
Never dealt with it.
It goes back to what I said about the documentary episode of Strange New Worlds. Like, there are certain questions, if you don't have a good answer for them, then just don't ask the question. And the idea of they dropped Khan and his party off on this planet 15 years ago and then never came back. I mean, I think it makes sense in the original Star Trek, because the original Star Trek it's just these people on this ship. And even though, we know that theoretically there's like a larger institution that they are serving, we almost never see any of that. And it's pretty much just, you get the idea, and you even get this impression in some of the early seasons of TNG, where it's like, it's just the captain of the ship flying around doing whatever he wants. And if Kirk decided, I'm going to maroon you on this planet, then that's what happened. And nobody followed up because Kirk said, to hell with you, dude, you're staying here. And that was it. And it only becomes a problem later for some people when you realize, like, oh no, but the Federation is like this huge thing, and Starfleet is like this huge thing, and they have an organization and they have an institution. And why didn't anybody, why didn't Kirk file a report and say, by the way, I dropped some people off on this planet, you might want to check on them, and, right? Like, but there's no good answer, because the people who wrote Star Trek II didn't care, because that's not the story they wanted to tell. They wanted to tell a story about Khan and his people have been here this whole time, and they're abandoned, and everything went really bad, and it was supposed to be a nice planet, but it turned out to be a terrible planet, and Khan is really, really, really mad at Kirk about it, and now he's got a chance, and he's going to kill him. Like, that's what's important. It doesn't matter. Why did nobody check on him? I don't know. Who cares? That's not important.
Right.
But so unless the creators of Khan had like a really good answer to that question, which I don't think they need to, because again, I don't care. But unless they had a really good answer to that question, just don't worry about it. Don't even bring it up. Like, talk about other stuff,
The escape of Khan's daughter and to secretly advocate for augment rights, I think, is obviously a topic they touch on at the end of the show. How does her subsequent hidden identity as Dr. Lear complicate the future dialogue around genetic engineering and Federation laws? Because, could there be kind of a future connection between her and, La'an Noonien Singh, for example, from Strange New Worlds? Because, assuming that La'an is still around, she'd, probably be, I'm not sure how old she'd necessarily be at this particular point in the timeline if she's still kicking around, but do you feel there was some kind of some sort of connection or reference to La'an from Strange New Worlds was an oversight in this? Because I felt like it was, because I thought Leah's concerns and worries that she kind of talked about augments. It's like, well, hang on, surely you're, I don't know what relation La'an would be to, Dr. Lear in terms of family tree history, but I felt like, hang on, she served in Starfleet quite happily. Like she's a, great granddaughter of Khan or something, like whatever the case was.
Well, but who knows? Like, I don't get the impression they're having Khan family reunions, like, I mean, and they do kind of, I mean, they make it clear that, I think the excuse they came up with for La'an was like, well, she's genetically related to Khan, but she doesn't have any of the augment superpowers. So so she's okay. But I mean, yeah, I'm fine with them not mentioning her in the audio series, because one of the things that kind of annoys me is when they pretend that everybody knows everybody, and it's like, oh, well, like I don't like it when they write the characters as though the characters are watching the show, like not everybody in not everybody in Starfleet knows everybody. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, I like one of the things I really like. There's a moment early on in TNG, and it's a terrible episode. It's the Naked Now, the remake of Naked Time, where, but there's a moment where they're reading the log entries or the history file or whatever about what happened on the original Enterprise, and Picard is reading it, and it's just like a history file to him. He doesn't react to it being Captain Kirk or the original Enterprise. It's just a thing that happened in history that is relevant to their situation. Nobody nerds out about it. Nobody's like, oh my God, it was the original Enterprise. Those guys are heroes. I love those guys. Like they're professionals. They're professionals in a military. Like, people who serve in the Navy don't know the names of all the fucking naval heroes that ever served. Like maybe some of them do, but it's not common knowledge. And, so it's just kind of weird and fan servicey to have like everybody in the new show are huge fans of the people in the old show, even though theoretically they're, just one of millions of people who have served in this institution. But yeah, the genetic engineering thing at the end of it kind of annoyed me, because they just kind of dropped it. And it's like, they just sort of like Tuvok saying, I'm going to spend the rest of my career working to defend the rights of people. Are you though? Or are you just kind of saying that? Yeah, because you're a legacy character. You're from you had like 7 years of your own show. Basically, you were a major character on another series. You never mentioned this one time, dude. Yeah, and it's like, and I don't necessarily mind that, but I mean, just it feels like it's kind of a big issue, and it's something that Star Trek has used in the past as like a metaphor for racism and discrimination. It was the basis of one of the best Strange New Worlds episodes, and and they just kind of drop it at the end, like, oh yeah, Starfleet does discriminate against genetically engineered people, but you know what? Maybe I'll do something about that. The end. Okay. Next, exactly.
I asked myself also. I thought about the whole La'an thing. Obviously, when Dr. Lear revealed herself as Kali Noonien Singh, But and what I really came up with was like, you know what? I don't care, and the reason why I don't care is because I don't think this is even canon. Like I think this is just kind of unless a future show or movie mentions this specific thing, it's kind of like a book or a comic book. It's kind of
treat it like a book, a novella or whatever, or one of the Star Trek novels.
It's its own little thing. I don't even think it actually counts unless the greater Star Trek franchise, the TV franchise or movie franchise, makes it count. So that's why I didn't get bent out of shape over anything. Like, did I enjoy the story? Yeah, for the most part, I did. There were things about the podcast I thought were better than others, but some questions were raised. I thought some of the solutions were novel. I thought some other stuff just didn't work for me. But but overall, I thought it was pretty well done. But but the whole augment thing also, it's such a big issue, and you could do so much with it, and you could actually really delve into it. And Star Trek really never has, except for the occasional great episode where it comes up, like Strange New Worlds, for instance, or the Dr. Bashir episode of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
But overall, Star Trek's whole feeling about augments is, who cares? Like, who cares? If we if we meet one that we like, great.
Exactly. Yeah. You're one of the good ones.
Yeah.
You're one of the good ones, series regular.
Exactly.
It's a good point there, because why do they all get such a bad name? It's kind of like, saying, oh, well, because Adolf Hitler was German, he was actually Austrian, I think. All Germans are bad. It's like, and it's like, well, no, that's just a fucking major generalization. So yeah, I think with this, you've got to, there was, within the series, there was plenty of, really interesting characters on the planet, that were followers, and, they were nice people. They were they weren't all, maniacal tyrants. So yeah, I think it gave a different perspective, I think, to the augments, and I thought that was really, really good to sort of see that come through.
I think the biggest problem for me with it, because I have very mixed feelings about it. I thought that the production was fantastic. I thought the voice cast was great. I thought the whole thing technically was terrific, and I hope they do more things like this. I hope they do more of these, because other Doctor Who has done audio dramas for forever, and and they've been successful, and even Star Wars used to do audio dramas. I don't know, they haven't really done one lately, but there are these amazing full cast and music audio drama versions of the original Star Wars movies that are just so much fun and so great to listen to. So it would be cool for Star Trek to to do some more like this, but they tried to do this thing with Khan where they change him, but by the end they have to change him back because it's
he has
a
to get to a
prequel
certain place.
Yeah, exactly. It's a prequel, and because of that, they feel obligated to match it up to Star Trek 2. So it's like Khan experiences some character growth in sort of the middle part of the series, and then they have to figure out how to wind him back so that he's full of vengeance and hatred again by the end. And it just it's not a character arc. It's more like a character rubber band where he's like, oh, I'm a changed person. Oh, never mind. I have to go back. I have to become a tyrant again because there's a movie that I'm in and everybody's expected me to be the bad guy. So it just felt a little, why in terms of story, why, what are we here for? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, talking about that, Steve, how did you feel about the Naveen Andrews portrayal in terms of that, more, his portrayal of Khan compared with the more, I guess, kind of charismatic, manipulative character of Khan we saw Ricardo Montalban play in Space Seed, or even the more vengeful, self-aggrandizing kind of version of Khan in Star Trek 2?
I thought Naveen Andrews was great. In terms of his performance, I thought he was great. I think the character as written wasn't always so great, but I think his performance was fantastic. Yeah. Sorry, John.
I was expecting
over you.
John,
I was expecting a line there from Ricardo Montalban, where someone could say, the ship. Welcome to Alpha City 5. Fantasy Island style. They could have been a bit of that.
No, I wish they'd done that. No, I'm mad.
What they did do.
Sorry, John, I talked over you, mate.
No. What they did do, it made me kind of roll my eyes. Like somebody else on the planet yelled, Khan!
I hated that so much. I hated that so much. Like,
Come
what
on.
are you? Stop it!
All the chanting, all the chanting of they did on multiple episodes.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that because like one of the little things about it that I liked that isn't immediately obvious is the literary touchstone of it is Samuel Taylor Coleridge, not John Milton, not Shakespeare, not any of the literary stuff that we associate with Khan from previous appearances. You know, and that's again, that's like one of the sort of lazy fan servicey things that they do sometimes, where it's like, oh, we know that this guy likes the writing of John Milton because he mentioned it once, so let's just bring him back and make that his whole thing. And they didn't do that. They, you know, the series ends. The last voice we hear is a recording of Khan quoting from Coleridge, and I'm just like, it's a little thing. But I like that they did that they didn't find reasons for him to be quoting Moby Dick the whole time. You know, it's like,
Yes.
but he quotes it in the movie. Yeah, okay. He's read some books. Okay. You know, like it's a little thing. But then they do that, but then they also do the, you know, shoehorning in the, like, having somebody scream Khan for no reason other than somebody else screamed it in something else, you know?
Yeah. And there was something, I don't remember what it was, but there was something else too. Somebody else said something or did something that was a callback to something else in the original series, I think it was, where I was just like, oh, come on. Like, you know, like, so, but yeah, I mean, all that fan servicey stuff, which I guess you kind of have to work in. But the core of the story of Khan, like, having to adjust himself in terms of what kind of a leader he was trying to be when SETI Alpha 5 was still like a lush world that could have been conquered. And then how it all kind of went south when 6 exploded and the Alborians showed up. You know, for me, it was touch and go. Like, I did not care for the Alborians in general. But overall, I thought, as you said, you know, the production value was great. I thought the story was fine. But yes, it was very much like, as you said, also in terms of having to change him, then change him back. It was like Homer Simpson. He literally says that in episodes, like, you know, well, I guess he quickly changed and then he quickly changed back.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, but I mean, I like the idea of the Alborians more than I necessarily like them in the show, but I like the concept of them. And again, we live in this era now where they're constantly looking for reasons to repeat themselves. So the fact that, you know, a race of telepathic aliens crashed on the planet and it's people we've never met before, I was like, oh, thank God they made up something new. They didn't just say they're betazoids. You know what I mean? It's like, oh no, they're new people that we haven't met before. Thank God. You know?
Let's go kill them all.
Let's kill them all. Yeah.
What did you guys think about the we lost Nick, by the way, but that's okay. The characters, in terms of differentiating the different characters, because I sort of found a bit of difficulty in differentiating between some of the voice actors. It kind of like some were very distinctive, but particularly the female ones. It was very hard to sort of work out who was who. How did you guys sort of feel about that?
I had the same problem.
Yeah, but throughout the entire series, I was never sure who, when Marla was talking or one of the other female augments was talking. Like, there was 2 specific ones who Ren Schmidt, who played Marla, and I don't know the name of the actor who played the other female, but they sounded so much alike, and I honestly could not tell who was who most of the time, unless it was literally a scene with Khan, which is like, I love you, Khan. Okay, well then you're obviously Marla.
I know what that one is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of it's the audio version of when they cast like 2 actors in a movie that look similar to each other, and they're not like famous actors, or it's not like you don't know them, and you're like, okay, wait a minute, is he the one which one? And it's like, could one of these have been a blonde and one of these have been a redhead? Like, can you help me out here? You know, and it's sort of like that, because I had the same problem. I thought some of the voices were so similar that I was like, okay, wait a minute, where are we now? Are we back on the Excelsior? Are we back on the planet? Like, who's talking? But yeah, it's like I said, I'm glad that they did it. I'm glad that they released it. I hope that it leads to more things like this. But I mean, especially after knowing that this project has been gestating for so long, and like first it was going to be a TV show, then it was going to be a movie, and then they said it'll be an audio drama, and first it was like Nicholas Meyer's thing, and then he kind of stepped back, and it's his story, but it's other people working on it. Like a lot of the stuff that had me kind of interested in it in the beginning kind of fell away. And it feels like this is what we ended up with. And there were, like I said, it was really well done technically. The cast did great. But in terms of the story, and I mean, I wasn't exactly on the edge of my seat waiting for the new episodes to drop. I can't wait to see what happens next. I was just sort of like, oh, there's a new one of these. Okay, I'll listen to this, I guess, so I can talk about it, with other people. But that's really about it.
Yeah. When I look back also on it, like overall, I was like, well, what did I want out of this? Like, what was the story? What happened in those 20 years on Steady Alpha 5? Now that we know, at least, this version of that story, it's like, it was okay. Like, all right. Like,
yeah,
aliens showed up, I guess. And, and now we know kind of why Steady Alpha 6, and there's some problems with the augments. And we know how Marla died, even though, like, Khan told us in the movie how Marla died, but now we got to hear it. And okay. And I don't know what the daughter does, honestly, like in terms of like what it adds. I just don't know what the point of the daughter is. It's like, okay, there's a part of Khan that lives on, somebody who sees her father and understands all of his flaws, but also kind of sees also what was good about him. But like, okay, great. Like
that was kind of my reaction at the end of it. Okay, great.
maybe she's the one thing that Khan does right. I guess that might have been maybe a takeaway.
Yeah,
from
I guess. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but it just seems very much like it almost feels like a lot of it was, the sunk cost, where it's like, well, we've had this sitting around for so long, we've got to do something with it. Let's just do it. Let's just do it as a podcast and put it out. And, because it doesn't, having listened to it, it doesn't seem like a story that was crying out to be told. The version of Khan that it gives us isn't, I mean, again, I thought Naveen Andrews did great, but in terms of the characterization, it was just kind of like, okay, so he's a cult leader and he's a tyrant, but also, he's kind of a nice guy sometimes. But then at the end,
Waco in space.
Yeah. Apologies for my camera dropping out again. Today's stream has been full of technical issues. So if you've already talked about this, feel free to let me know. Did you guys have any issues with some of the characters? I kind of struggled from time to time.
We did talk about that. We did talk about that.
The voices.
The voices. Is that what you mean?
The voice. Yeah, I was going to touch on the voice cast, but yeah, you already talked about that while my camera was disconnected. I
think they should have had him do funny voies. I think they should with the actors who played Marla did with Dr.
Some
Weird.
of them. Ivan characters like Ivan were easier, but as you probably already touched on while I was disconnected or whatever. Particularly the female characters. I really struggled hearing differences in their voices.
A bit of helium would have gone a long way. Yeah.
There you go.
A bit of what?
Yeah.
A bit of helium. A bit of helium. Yeah.
Oh, this is really great.
Oh yes.
I love your Khan.
Yes. Okay, just to wrap up the show. Obviously, we've got Academy coming. You guys looking forward to Academy, or like John? I was going to say, as we're talking about at the start of the stream, I kind of feel like you and you as well, Steve. When you're running a YouTube channel or a website and so forth, I think seeing how many views a video gets or how many views an article gets, I think is quite a can be an interesting test bed in terms of taking the temperature of how much interest Star Trek fans have on a certain topic. And I obviously have realized in the last couple of weeks or whatever, yes, when I do a video on United, it gets a lot of views, but when you do a video on Starfleet Academy, maybe not so many views. Have you kind of noticed what through articles you guys have done on your channels or websites, how much interest you believe is kind of out there just in terms of the impending Academy series?
It's a new show, and there's always skepticism about new Star Trek, and every new Star Trek show gets lambasted by the audience. It's just it's just how it is. This one is also, because it skews young adult. It's a college Star Trek show, basically, right? So there's that kind of stigma against it. Kind of offset by the fact that they have these two amazing Academy Award level actors who are kind of the two series leads, and then they kind of hedge their bets also, putting the Doctor in there to kind of like, hey, longtime fans, here's somebody that you love, and here he is. But obviously, I think the show will live and die based on how well the young cast is received. I thought the trailers look encouraging. I thought that the trailers looked good. I'm a little soft on what I'm perceiving to be like the core story of the show, which is basically like this. There's this young kid who Paul Giamatti's character kidnapped the mom, and now and Holly Hunter recruits him into the Academy for some reason to protect him or whatever. And that's kind of like the mystery of like why the mom disappeared. That seems to be like what, just from the trailer, that seems to be like what the core story is, or an aspect of the core story. So I'm like, all right, we'll see how that plays out. In terms of what you're saying about interest for what we're seeing with Screen Rant, yeah, so far it's not anything like not what we're seeing with United. The reason why I'm doing so many articles, not just because I'm I genuinely am interested in Star Trek United, but it's doing very, very well for us because the audience is also very interested. We'll see what happens with Starfleet Academy. I'm personally excited for it, but I just think there's more in the plus columns about why Academy could be good than the negatives. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't done any videos about it myself because my approach is as a critic and like a critical analysis, and the show hasn't been aired yet, so I don't have anything to say about it. But I have noticed just my own general impression. There does seem to be more excitement about Star Trek United in the fan base online than about Starfleet Academy. And I think that's a shame because, for one thing, as we've just spent most of the show talking about, especially when Mike Sussman was here, there is no Star Trek United. Not yet. Maybe there will be. Hopefully there will be. But it doesn't exist. It's just an idea. It's just a pitch at this point. And Star Trek or Starfleet Academy is coming. Like the show, they made the show. They're releasing the show. Yes. The show is real. We're going to get to see the show. And yeah, maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll be bad. I suspect there are some people in the fan base who will just not like it no matter what, because there's just always going to be that segment of fans, not just in Star Trek, but in any long established thing. There's just going to be people that are just going to hate on it just reflexively because it doesn't fit their narrow view of what this thing is supposed to be. And they'll be looking at, it did this wrong, it did this wrong, it did this wrong, and they're not even going to pay attention to whether they like any of the characters or care about the story. I'm cautiously optimistic about it personally. That's been my attitude toward all of the newer Star Trek stuff, is cautious optimism, and sometimes that has been rewarded and sometimes it hasn't been. But I think also, unfortunately, I think some of the lack of enthusiasm is because it's perceived as being an attachment of Discovery. And there are still a lot of people in the fan base who just have a very anti-Discovery attitude. And I think that's too bad, because even though Discovery was a very, very imperfect show, it doesn't deserve a fraction of the blowback and the hate that it got. And again, from those certain kinds of fans who disliked it for reasons not having anything to do with the actual content of the show. Because I wound up feeling very sort of warm toward Discovery. There were parts of it that I really didn't like. There were parts of it that I found incredibly frustrating, but there were also parts of it that I absolutely loved and that I wish we had seen more of. And, the fact that the new show is kind of a spinoff of Discovery, I'd rather it be a spinoff of Discovery than like another spinoff of Classic Trek or another spinoff of TNG. Even though technically Discovery is a spinoff of Classic Trek too, but they eventually changed their minds and said, no, we're going to the future. Screw it. But I'm more interested in that because it feels like there's more of an opportunity to do something that we haven't seen before. And yeah, the Doctor's going to be in it. And I'm never going to complain about, Robert Picardo picking up a paycheck, but I'm not necessarily super excited to see a bunch of legacy characters crammed into it. But I'm interested to see Paul Giamatti. I'm interested to see Holly Hunter. And hopefully the new, the young characters will be the focal point. And hopefully it will be different. Hopefully it will be like a young adult teen soap Star Trek show, and it'll be a good one. Like, I don't care what it is as long as it's good.
It seems like they've certainly made an effort to kind of appeal to, obviously the 20-somethings demographic, I think, is probably the demographic that is the least, the most untapped demographic for Star Trek audiences. But it seems like they're not, obviously they're focusing on that for the key part of Academy. But that being said, obviously with, as you were saying, Steve, they've got your actors such as Holly Hunter and Paul Giamatti and Bob Picardo and everything, which are going to appeal to the, the classic Star Trek fans, the ones that have been with Star Trek for years. So I think it seems like to me that they're making an effort to put stuff into the show that's going to obviously appeal to the new audiences and bring in some of those 20-somethings that haven't in the past been, viewers of Star Trek, but also, enough that, us hardcore, long-term fans are also going to be happy as well.
Yeah. And nothing would thrill me more than for this show to not only be good. That's the first thing I would like. Just, I don't care. Make it a good show. But if it's a good show that catches on with young people, that would be fantastic. I would love that. I would love if there was just a massive influx of young teenage and early 20-something Star Trek fans. Because, one of the things that worries me about it is that, Trekkies are an aging fan base. Yeah. And it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The studio makes projects that pander to the pre-existing fan base, which encourages the pre-existing fan base to kind of close in and keeps it from growing. But then the studio says, oh, okay, well, the audience isn't growing, so I guess we'd better keep making stuff to make the current audience happy. And it just keeps getting worse and worse. And, like at a certain point, you have to bring new people in. TNG brought new people in. Even Voyager brought new people in. I'm always surprised when I meet like someone of roughly my age who was like a huge Voyager fan, because I wasn't. But apparently there were a lot of people who were, and it brought people in. And also there were a lot of people who found it like on Netflix when it first hit streaming. A lot of people were watching Voyager on Netflix. That was one of the things that encouraged Paramount to start its own streaming service, was because they saw how great Star Trek was doing on Netflix, especially Voyager. For whatever reason, people loved streaming Voyager on Netflix for a few years there. And, it feels like the newer shows just, even though, again, I've loved some of them, I've definitely not loved some of them, but some of them have been successful, some of them haven't. But on the whole, it doesn't feel like they've brought like a rush of new fans into the fan base. And I would really love to see that happen. I would really love to see a new Star Trek show that just really brought in a new audience and infused, the fan base, and hopefully it gave the studio some encouragement to say, hey, you can, you don't have to keep, preaching to the choir here. Like, you can try some things and try to attract a different audience, So, yeah.
I think they've hedged their bets with this in the sense that, we haven't really seen a hybrid show like this before, where you've got something that's quite new, sort of mated to something where there's some traditional links. I think maybe the closest I could sort of recall would be DS9 with maybe O'Brien, who wasn't really a massively strong character in TNG. But by having those legacy characters together with that new cast, I think it's probably a bit of a playing it safe, hedging your bets type approach. And I don't think we've seen this before, so it could be very interesting. And I think it's really important, as you say, Steve, we've got to get that next generation of fans in. Otherwise, this franchise dies. It's on the clock. Yeah.
And so does every other franchise. I mean, so does Star Wars. So does, Batman. I mean, whatever you care about, like,
You can see him in the back corner there. Yeah.
Hey, and that's an old Batman. Don't be making movies about that Batman.
No.
That's 30 years old. Yeah. Yeah, well, and like someone in the chat said, bringing in new people is always a good thing, but when it doesn't resemble Star Trek in any way, shape, or form, that's a big problem. But see, I don't know what show they're talking about.
Yeah,
because all the new
probably Section 31. Probably Section 31.
But yeah, and I didn't really like that, but I mean, I wasn't like, fuming on the couch going, this isn't Star Trek. Like I want them to try stuff. I want them to try stuff, like, yeah, Section 31 didn't work. Okay. I'm not sad they made it. I wish it was better. I'm not sad that they made it. I'm not mad that they made it. I just wish they'd done a better job. And that, I'll feel.
I think at the end of the day, there needs to be some ingredients in the recipe that make it what it is. If you walk into a restaurant and you order a pizza and then the waiter hands you a bowl of spaghetti with chocolate sauce on top, you're going to say, hang on, that's not what I ordered. That's not a pizza. So I think do you know what I mean? Like there has to be some fundamental ingredients in the recipe that go, when I've ordered Star Trek, I'm getting something. You can change it a little bit, you can deconstruct it, you can make it a little bit different and so forth, but you have to have some core ingredients that make what it is.
And I guess the disagreement between certain fans is what those ingredients are, because to me, the heart of Star Trek is it's an allegorical sci-fi show that makes commentary on our real world, that embraces diversity and inclusion, has like a racially diverse main cast, has men and women in equal roles, and promotes multiculturalism and diversity as positive things, as sources of strength, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. It's written into the DNA of the thing. And so you've got that. You've got people on a spaceship or people on a space station, and then, like I was saying earlier, like the sort of common, the community property of Star Trek. There's going to be Klingons, there's going to be Starfleet. The ships are going to look a certain way. The uniforms are going to look a certain way. They're going to use certain vocabulary that's kind of associated. But those are all superficial things. Those are just kind of secondary indicators. To me, the heart of it is, the inclusivity and the political messaging and the telling the audience, hey, if we look at what we can become if we get past the problems that are holding us back today, and look at the changes that if we are somehow able to make these changes, look how much better things can be. But also look how these challenges will still be with us in the future. Like we'll never completely fix everything, but we have to keep trying. Like that to me is what Star Trek is. And even though the various new shows, again, I haven't liked all of them, but I feel like they have all fit that mold. Like whether I liked it or not, when I'm in the minority. Except for maybe the first and part of the second season, I really wasn't a fan of Lower Decks, but I never watched it and said, this isn't Star Trek. I wasn't a fan of Star Trek Picard, really. I never watched it and said, this isn't Star Trek. It's Star Trek that I just didn't like. I never thought that, I liked Discovery more than I liked Picard. I never watched Discovery and said, well, this isn't Star Trek. It's just different.
Right.
Even when they changed the Klingons, it took me 2 episodes and I got used to it. Everybody freaked out about they changed the Klingons. Oh, the Klingons don't look right. Okay, look, just 2 or 3 episodes, I was used to it. I don't care. It's a show. It's a made-up TV show. It's a made-up TV show. I don't care how the Klingons look, as long as I'm interested in the characters and the story. Make them look like regular people again, and don't explain it. I don't care, But like, it's just because I don't know what the new Star Trek thing is that bears no resemblance to Star Trek. I haven't seen it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fundamentally agree with all of that. I also think all of the current shows, all the new shows, from Discovery down to Strange New Worlds and from Academy, from what it looks like, also they all have that. They all have whatever it is that Star Trek is, which is that diversity. In fact, the Kurtzman era is more diverse, and not just in terms of more LGBTQ characters and more types of people being represented, but also the styles of shows are more diverse. There's an animated comedy. There's a show aimed at young people. There's a more traditional episodic show. There was a serialized action show. There's whatever Picard was for 3 seasons, because it was 3 different things. But
exactly.
Yes.
In the wheel on that one.
All those shows were different, but they were all fundamentally Star Trek. And at the end of the day, they all embraced what I think Star Trek is, what needs to be, which is optimism. Because there's dark things, there's wars. The Federation goes through hell sometimes. Starfleet people die. There's lots of stuff, but Star Trek is still, to me, the best of the franchises, just because it's the only fundamentally optimistic vision of the future. It's the only one that says, we're going to have problems. We're always going to have problems, but if we work together, we can get it right, and it can be better. For sci-fi especially, Alien is dark, Blade Runner is dark, Predator is dark, but like Star Wars also. Well, Star Wars is the past. It's a long time ago, but Star
Wars.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not even about us at all.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about us at all. Battlestar Galactica, but like Star Trek says, we can do it. We can do it if we get our act together and we actually trust each other and try and work together. And it's an incredible message. It's still, and all the new shows have it in some form or another.
Yeah.
Indeed. Here. Any final thoughts before we wrap up the show?
Anyone signing the Section 31 sequel? What do you call it?
Section 32.
Section 32.
I did not get that movie. I lament that. Partially because that movie did not do well, but also largely because of the new regime at Paramount, Skydance. We're not going to get more streaming movies because I feel like that's a missed opportunity to be able to tell different types of stories, new types of stories, tackle characters that have been underserviced, maybe create new stuff in a relatively safe format of a 90-minute streaming film that doesn't have to be high budget, but we could have, I think the loss of that as a format, that we could have had different types of Star Trek that maybe could have worked, maybe would have been great, maybe would not have.
Just because Section 31 didn't work shouldn't mean you abandon the whole concept of it. Just acknowledge the fact that particular iteration didn't work.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it's just a new management saying we just don't want to do streaming films. We want to concentrate on theatrical. And also, speaking of theatrical, I personally mourn Star Trek 4. I wish we got to see it. I wish we got some kind of Kelvin fourth timeline, especially later on now, like 10 years later, as it would have been, because I would have loved to see Chris Pine play middle-aged Kirk. I would have loved to see his take on, we've seen young 25 hotshot horn dog Kirk. I want to see him grow up. And be the more mature version.
The mid to late 40s Kirk or whatever,
I would have loved to see his take on that.
I agree with that. I definitely. I mean, I have always been a fan of the Kelvin timeline movies, and I mean, I thought Star Trek Beyond, especially, is one. It's still one of my favorite Star Trek movies. Period. Me too. So I mean, if that's the last one, at least they go out on a high note. But I'm the same way. Like what really disappoints me about that is that I'm pretty sure the main reason why they didn't end up making a fourth one is because the studio just didn't want to pay for it, and specifically they didn't want to pay the actors, which sucks.
And Chris Hemsworth, because I think they were talking about bringing back Chris Hemsworth. Yeah,
I think at one point that was the concept. Yeah, but I mean, it's like, come on, guys. Again, Star Trek has never been Star Wars. Star Trek has never been as popular as Star Wars. There's never been a Star Trek movie that was a Star Wars level blockbuster where everybody went to see it. But all three of those Kelvin timeline movies made money. And, and they were all successes for the studio. And when it came time to make a fourth one and the main cast said, we'd love to do it, but you have to pay us a little more. And so Paramount said, well, I guess we just won't do it. That sucks, you know? It's not like Chris Pine didn't want to play Captain Kirk again. He was open to it. He just wanted to get paid what he was worth. And the studio said, well, then I guess we just won't do it. And that's too bad. That's really too bad.
Indeed. Well, thanks everybody for coming along today to be part of the live show. Obviously, a bit of a surprise there that Mike Sussman joined us in the early part of the stream. Bit of a bonus there. So if any of you guys who are watching the stream now missed the part at the beginning where Mike Sussman showed up and talked about Star Trek United for a bit, you can go back and watch this on replay and you can catch all the things Mike had to say about that. John, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for guesting on the show today.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for having me. And it's great to meet you guys virtually. And Steve, also, I've been watching your content for years, so this is really awesome to be able to hang out with you.
It was awesome to meet you too, my friend.
And as always, thanks, Steve, for coming on the show again. You've been on a couple of times, and it's always an absolute pleasure to have you on board.
It's always an absolute pleasure to be here. So I'm glad I could be here.
And David, we've got another video coming out from you in the next. Well, actually, both of us in the next few days. Do you want to mention that?
Yes, so we're doing a bit of another in our trilogy that's sort of connected to Star Trek United, where we're sort of going back to Enterprise and seeing how we're connecting the dots between those two elements, and that's involving Shran. So we're just sort of putting that one in the can, and that should be out, Nick, I think middle next week.
Tuesday, I think. Yeah, maybe Tuesday. I think is when I'm aiming for that one. So yeah. Yep. Thanks everybody for coming along. Thanks everybody for being part of the stream today. There'll be one more live show before the end of the year, probably around middle of December before Christmas. So we'll catch you on the next stream. Thanks for everybody coming. Live long and prosper, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Take care, everyone.